Welcome to the Metamorphosis Show, the live broadcast where we talk food, thought control. Just kidding, not thought control.
Mind control.
Yeah, mind control and movement in a live broadcast. Today, my very special guest is Antranik. You have probably seen him on Reddit. You've seen him on YouTube. He is the authority in the bodyweight training forums, or at least one of them. And we're really glad to have him here today in Venice Beach. Welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thanks, man. Thank you.
So, just to start out, and I apologize if there's going to be any connectivity issues. We just ran into that before. So, if that happens, bear with us. We'll reconnect. We have all day to do this, so we're going to be here all day, and we'll make it right. But just to begin, can you talk about how you got involved in gymnastic strength training to begin with?
Well, it really all goes back to when I first discovered the original Muscle Beach in Santa Monica, because I was into yoga and cycling and swimming before, but once I started to, I realized that in this part of the beach, it's like an adult playground, and I realized that people just go there and all of a sudden you just see the same faces over and over, and it's like an actual community, and you start to call people by their first names. And I mean, I grew up in LA where there is no community like that, where people are just casually going to a spot and like they just know each other. And that really got me into the traveling rings and slacklining, and that opened up my world into gymnastic strength training, because I like gymnastics because they do everything with strict form. They're like, and I love doing things with proper form. So, you know, there's of course varying ways to go about it, but gymnastics was like a good example. And so I just got into the rabbit hole of bodyweight exercises and just figuring out how to train myself, how to train others, and everything I had learned from yoga, which is the purest form of bodyweight exercise training in a sense, was applicable. So like I was able to, just meld everything together, which is nice.
Yeah, so it seems like, and I mentioned this before, yoga does everything extraordinarily well at taking the body and making sure that almost everything is in balance, except, and I've argued before, that the pulling is completely neglected. There's not a lot of pulling.
Right.
So it seems like gymnastic strength training is an incredible complement to that, because you do so much pulling work, right?
Yeah, that's definitely one thing that's missing in yoga, is that there's no pull-up bar and no way to do rows, but they do get the postural muscles still isometrically. But if someone keeps strengthening themselves only on the floor, their pushing strength will just keep increasing, and they're not going to run into injury, but there might be an imbalance where, sure, they could do a lot of pushing related work like push-ups or handstands, but their pulling might be regressing or not there. So, and it's definitely much easier to hold a straighter back when you could do a few pull-ups.
Right.
Because the strength required to do that is much greater, and it just translates well to just standing posture.
Yeah, I mean, the clients that I've trained that have an incredible background in yoga are just, I mean, handstands, no problem, incredible pushing strength, and then when it comes to just being able to perform a single pull-up, it's like, maybe I could get one. And I mean like really fit people.
Pull-ups are hard. I mean, pull-ups are hard for everyone. I don't think they ever feel easy.
Right. Right.
I don't know. That's how it feels for me anyway. So it's understandable, you know. It's also one of those things you just got to work on if you really want to get better at, or someone forces you to.
Oh man, we have a can of worms to get into there. But who was really crucial in pointing you in the right direction in terms of your programming for gymnastic strength training? Like, was there a particular person or persons at Old Muscle Beach where you said, you know what, sir or madam, can you teach me how to be strong like you?
I didn't go to any one person in particular. There are many talented people at the beach that everyone has like a wealth of information, but it's very usually like everyone has like a niche that they're good at, or they have a unique like configuration of things that they know.
Right.
And so there's no one person really. It's always like, even if I were to go there right now, I'll probably learn something I've never done before if I just spend a couple hours there and just mingle with the people, because there's people of varying degrees in that adult playground. And I wish there were more adult playgrounds around the world. That's actually a project I need to do and spread somehow, because to show what Muscle Beach is like, what the equipment is like, and have that be replicated around the world. Because yeah, our weather is good, which permits it to happen, but even if the weather is good only for 4 months out of the year where you live and it's easy to work out outdoors, that's still better than, you know, not having a place to work out. So
yeah, I've been talking about that for a while too, just
nice.
Allowing for people to be able to train and exercise, not in their house, in the outdoors, in a way that's very simple and anyone can get started.
Yeah, there are kids' playgrounds that you can definitely do bodyweight training on, but nowadays there are rules like that say no adults without kids allowed. You know, like there's like a lot of fear in people. You know, they don't want just like, if their kids are there, they don't want someone who's a non-parent.
We don't want you planching next to our kids, all right? That is disgusting.
Yeah, I mean, some people go extreme in there. I don't know. It just shows you how scared people are sometimes, and I don't know. But I want to change that, because it's not just, you know, why should only kids have a playground? Like,
that's a great question.
Like adults need it too, like especially because they work a lot and they need some form of outlet, like some form of release, physical, just, you know. And why do we work out anyway? Because before, everything we used to do, like not even 100 years ago, maybe 50 years ago, like if you had to do laundry, you had to manually do your laundry.
Right.
Like manually you had to like clean everything. So like, and so everything was labor intensive, everything. Yeah. So you didn't need to work out. It wasn't missing in your life. It was just...
Right, it was a seamless workout. It was just being alive. It was being awake.
To survive, you had to move and do things and be physical. And now that that's disconnected, you know, we go to the gym, we work out to fulfill that, you know, what's missing there. But you have to always, you know, that's why another reason why some people will say, well, I just want to get like bigger arms, or I want to get a six-pack. You know, you hear that, but it's like, you know, you don't get this, you don't just get muscles, I mean, for no reason. I mean, it's kind of like maybe when you're 16, you know, someone is like really thinking about that, you know, the physique aspect a lot.
Oh man, there are plenty of people in their 40s thinking
I
about
guess,
that
yeah.
shit.
I mean, aesthetics is just, I don't know. Aesthetics should be the side effect of your training and fitness regime.
Right.
It shouldn't be like the main focus. Everyone should be comfortable in their own skin. Like, I don't know. It should just be comfortable.
That's a bold statement. Aesthetics should be a byproduct of your workout and not the first thing you're thinking of. I've been on both sides of that, and now I tend to agree with the latter, just because I have a different view of what health means. Yeah. You know, I don't think that being dogmatic about eating chicken and broccoli every 3 hours and making sure that, you know, you're taking your litany of supplements in order to look a certain way is necessarily healthy. I certainly admire it, and I've been there.
Yeah.
But I think that as I get older and look at a more holistic view of what being healthy means, it involves things that aren't necessarily so aesthetically based and are more like, do I feel good when I wake up? Do I feel good when I move?
Right.
And, you know, that, if I look good too, that's great. And usually if you're doing it the right way, that is what happens. So let's talk about specifics of, sorry for the incredibly loud helicopter. Let's talk about the specifics of some of these movements. So when you started, you had this background in cycling and yoga. You knew there would be a little bit of transference because you were a little bit fit, right? But how humbling and challenging was it to move? I don't want to scare anyone away because bodyweight exercise has its own rewards, but if you can squat 300 pounds, congratulations. But if you can't do a pistol because your body's not ready for it, it's a completely different movement, right? It's relative strength versus absolute strength. So talk about what it was like beginning and what your programming looks like now.
It always goes back, the basics will never leave you. So I focus on the basics all the time. I always will. And when I say the basics, it means like basic joint preparation, like making sure that, you know, you warm up not only the shoulders but also the wrists, you know, or warm up the ankles, you know, fire up the ankles. There's a lot of things that I never even thought about before. Like when I used to go to the gym a long time ago, I just mostly used the machines. This was like, I didn't know anything then, you know. I never thought about, you know, doing ankle circles or warming up my wrists. But I find that for longevity, like, I really need to take care of all the joints and have a warm-up sequence that like either stretches or mobilizes all the joints thoroughly, and that helps me just to feel good. And I think that's important for anyone in general, and that's, you know, that's also important even if you're doing barbell weightlifting. You know, if it's important to have the ankle mobility so that you can squat deep safely and, you know, not fall backwards like you would in a pistol, and
right,
you know, things like that. Yeah, every exercise has like somewhat different prerequisites, and it's not necessarily complicated, but it's all out there if someone just Googles it nowadays.
Right. And was Reddit a huge forum for you to begin with? Was there already a ton of information in there, or did you help? It seems like you've cultivated a lot of that and added a lot to that yourself.
Reddit is a great source for, there's a lot of experts on Reddit. Like, it's an easy way to get good answers. You can also get bad answers, but for the most part, there's a lot of smart people on there, but not everyone knows how to use that website. And before Reddit, Gymnastic Bodies had a forum. I don't know if you're familiar with gymnasticbodies.com, but they had an excellent forum before with great information, but that's fizzled away a bit. It's too moderated. All the smart people have kind of left. So that had a wealth of information there as well. And you know, you just pick things up from different pieces, and it also helps a lot to know anatomy, basic anatomy. So whenever someone is talking about, let's say, supination, or they use like some word you might not know, just look it up. It helps, you know, it helps to just learn basics, because those things stay with you forever, kind of, you know? It's like learning about nutrition. You should always learn about nutrition because you're eating every day. You know, you're going to eat like every 4 hours probably, right? Every 8 hours, something. Like everyone eats. Everyone eats. And so might as well, it's worth it to learn, you know, what you're putting in your body. What is it? You know, same way with training. It's an ongoing thing.
Yeah. So did you start out with just something that looks like it? So for example, just to put this in context, if you go on the Reddit bodyweight forum, there's like a basic beginner template, right? And so you're doing a push-pull, legs, 3 times a week. And it's basic skills in addition to a pretty extensive warm-up, which, man, those L-sits still, that's just, it's terrible for me. And we'll talk more about that later. But how long did it take you to get basic skills like a handstand, like strict muscle up? Like what can people expect in terms of time invested in this?
I see. It really depends on where their starting point is. So if someone can't do a push-up or can't hold a regular plank for more than 30 seconds, it's going to take them a lot longer, especially for a handstand. You know what I mean? But if push-ups are easy for that person, then they could you could imagine how it would be easier for them to go up against the wall to do a handstand, easier than the person who can't even hold a plank.
Right.
So to gauge it is really difficult, but in a year's time, someone could be capable of doing a lot of things. So a year is plenty of time, even for a muscle up, if they're working consistently and in a methodical manner, listening to their body, doing deload weeks. Like if you feel, if you've been working out 3 times a week for like 4 weeks, and you're sometimes like the fatigue just accumulates too much, and you need like a week off, do other things, in place of it. Sometimes, that's really important actually, because a lot of people have insecurity when it comes to doing enough, like someone says, well, okay, I'm going to start working out, and they go, I'm going to do this exercise 6 times a week. Before they did it, some people are like that. I'm going to do this every day.
Yeah, I've done that.
When before they did 0, so they're going from 0 to 100. Like just boom.
Yeah.
And then they're going to get like too sore or tired or not have enough recovery and rest, and then it's that gets them. That's discouraging sometimes. So people need to find a balance between just working out, recovery, and all that. So it's very important. And I say that because a lot of people feel like they're not doing enough. Like they're a little bit insecure. Like they could have just worked out really hard the day before, and they still feel like, oh, well, I need to do it. Well, you have to listen. Like, do you really need to?
Yeah, and those skill-based things that you're talking about, it's psychologically different, I think, from lifting weights, because in the weight room you get this very satisfying slapping another plate on each side and going, look, I'm physically stronger. Well, sorry for the fire.
It's okay.
But with some of these movements, it's like, damn it, I've been working on this for 3 months and I feel like I haven't moved an inch. And then a week later, you'll have a huge breakthrough of the plateau, and you'll be like, holy shit, now I can get at least 80% of this movement consistently.
Right. Yeah, I mean, there are many ways to gauge progress. Like, let's say you're doing pull-ups and you're stuck at 3 sets of 5 pull-ups, right? And you've been doing that for a couple weeks or something, and you're just like something, you can't add a rep or something. And you might feel like you're not improving, but actually you might be improving. Your range might be greater. Your explosiveness might be, more explosive.
Right.
So your tempo might be improved. Your form, your core might be in a better position. So there's all sorts of ways that you might be improving. It's very important to trust the process. If you putting work into something, you're gonna get a benefit out of it. It doesn't just, as long as you're progressively overloading, and that's another thing a lot of people, I guess, kind of maybe don't understand or not aware of. They say, okay, let's say a lot of people think, let's say I could do 10 push-ups. Well, okay, I'm gonna get stronger, so I'm gonna do 100 push-ups. Well, it doesn't work that way, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending if you like doing 100 reps of something or not.
Right.
You have to increase the intensity or the load of the exercise by making it, in other words, making it harder. So in a push-up, you could elevate your feet, for example.
So you're
right?
saying make it more mechanically challenging.
So decrease the leverage so that it becomes harder. Or you lean your shoulders more ahead of the wrists, and then, like chaturanga in yoga. Mm-hmm. And you could take that even more extreme and lean even more forward. And then all of a sudden you're only doing 5 push-ups. Right?
Right.
And so, it's the same way with weightlifting, barbell weightlifting. You wouldn't do 1,000 squats. You would increase the load a little bit.
Sure.
So that you're able to do 3 to 5 sets of, let's say, 8 reps, something like that. You know what I mean?
Do you write everything down?
You mean as a log?
Yeah.
I have I have times in my life where I'll log everything for like a month or two, very strict, and then I won't for a month or two. So I alternate, you know, like I found that it's very important to strike a balance between play and and work in the sense of training.
Right.
Because it's great having a strict routine. You know, it's amazing when you sit down, you write down your goals, and you say, okay, I'm going to work on, you figure out what the exercises are to reach your goals, and you create a routine, and you work on that for 2 months. But it's also great to just go to the beach and just don't think about working out in sets and reps, and instead just do whatever feels good, you know, and just whatever comes, like whatever you feel like doing on a whim, you know.
That's cool.
You know, that is like very important, because I don't know, because then you get to use the strength that you created. Maybe realize that, oh, I can now do this transition between this and this.
Sure.
You know, you wouldn't if you had not played with that before. Maybe, you know, you have to just give yourself opportunity. So.
And I think that's a huge advantage to. Wow, that's really loud street sweeper.
Yeah.
I'm going to say this anyway. I think that's a really huge advantage to gymnastics strength training and some more of the movement-based physical culture, in that you have a lot more sense of play in terms of movement, whereas if you just train in powerlifting, I mean, I did for a long time and I really got off on that training as well, but I don't think it allows for the same sense of just play in terms of your physique.
Right.
And I'm sure you can make an argument on both sides of that, but this is like movement-based stuff just lends itself to movement-based stuff that isn't rigid with sets and reps.
Right.
But that being said, what have been the challenges that have eluded you? Well, before we go into that, first of all, I want to hear about what you can't do.
Sure.
But before we get to that, no, talk about that. Talk about the things that you still can't do, that you've been like working towards and it's just beating you down.
Sure. I still feel like my handstand is horrible. For example, you know.
You've all seen him do handstands. That's not true.
Well, you know, handstand has been a long journey. I've been working on it for years, and I mean, yeah, I could kick up into it. I could tuck up into it with control now. I have a lot more control, but I've had like, because my right elbow doesn't extend as far as my left due to a bicycle accident like 10 years ago, which it's not a big deal, right? It's not a big deal, but it's just like a personal challenge that I have.
Sure.
It's made hand balancing a lot harder, because if one arm is straight and the other is slightly bent, you know, your balance is kind of off. And it took me a long time to actually realize what's going on. So handstand is a very long journey. It's a long journey, and then it's even longer. It's become even longer for me, having to deal with slightly different biomechanics and trying to figure out how. Oh, and my wrist, because of that injury, my wrist was always problematic. It's much better this year because I've been focusing on rehabbing it and all that stuff. But yeah, hand balancing is really hard.
See, so don't be discouraged if you've only been doing this a couple weeks or a couple months like me, or even years like Antranik.
Yeah.
It's just challenging, and it takes a long time. It's not like, well, honestly, to do anything well does, so stop fooling yourself.
Yeah, the thing with handstand is it requires full body tension. You have, and in all the right places. So you have to like squeeze the butt lightly, brace the abs, or think about the core a little bit. Point the feet. It helps to point the feet. It's like so much going on. Elevate the shoulders, you know? Mm-hmm. This is like a shrugging up. We don't normally have load in that position. You know, you have to go upside down and do that. Or unless you do an overhead press, you know?
What has been the most beneficial for you? Is it stomach or chest against the wall? Is it the frog handstand? Like which particular movement do you think was like, oh, that was the one?
Oh,
that really, really helped
I really like
because none of it's working for me.
I really like the tuck up.
Okay.
So if you're comfortable, I recommend people start with a chest to wall handstand. So they just walk the feet up the wall and then bring the hands closer over time. And the closer you could get your hands, the more stacked you'll be. But eventually you'll find comfort there, and then you should start playing with kicking up to a back to wall handstand. So you just kick up to the wall. And even if you can't kick up to the wall, eventually you will be able to. Even failed attempts at kicking up to the wall are making you stronger, and eventually you might find maybe even in the next session that, oh, you can kick up and get up. So, but what I've really liked is the tuck up. So you start with feet together and legs together and with your back against the wall, and you just tuck up, like basically instead of kicking up with a single leg, kick up with both legs together and stay in a tuck.
Like sort of like a frog position where your both feet come up.
Yeah, but with feet together.
Right.
Yes.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, and so that helps your core work really well, and it also helps for your hips to go over your shoulders. Because, you know, a lot of people, we have like, there's often a fear of kicking up too much, and a lot of people can't bring the hips over the shoulders.
Oh, it's scary,
and
man.
so, yeah, it's scary, exactly. And the tuck up helps with that, strengthening the core dramatically for that, at least in my experience. So.
Well, so what are the biggest mistakes?
Which is like the frogger, like you said.
Right. So what have been the biggest mistakes that you've made in this journey?
It's a good question.
None. He's made no mistakes.
No, that's not true. What comes to mind is, okay, so one time, this has happened to a lot of people. When I first started to get the muscle up, I was so happy to have gotten it, and the muscle up is very difficult, very hard on your tendons of the shoulder or elbow in general. And a lot of people, once they're able to do one muscle up, a whole new world is opened, and they'll want to do many.
Sure.
Over and over and over. And so that opens you up to a world of like tendonitis, basically.
Yeah.
Which is tendonitis is an overuse injury. It just happens from doing something repeatedly. It happens to a lot of people, especially people who work in construction. Like if you have to hammer something over and over and over and like thousands of times, you know, you'll get tendonitis too, maybe, you know. It's all about letting the body recover enough. And the problem with muscle ups, since they are hard on the tendons, you know, the exercise itself is not dangerous. It's not inherently dangerous, but you have to, if you could do one or two, you should just stick to single reps like that for like weeks or even months, just to make sure that the tendons are adapting at the same rate, because muscles recover very fast and get strong really fast, but tendons and connective tissue, which connect the muscles to the bones, heal a lot slower.
I think Coach Summer said something like 210 days or something.
Yeah,
that.
like,
I mean,
like
I don't know
10 times slower, let's say.
Yeah.
Right? And you oftentimes won't know that your tendons are on the brink of failure until pain starts occurring. And if you feel the pain, it's unfortunately already too late. It means you have to take a break.
Right.
You know, at least you have to take a break, at least from the exercises that aggravate that situation. So, and it could be difficult to find an alternative, you know. What if almost everything hurts now? What do you do then? Right. You still, and in that scenario, if you can't figure out a good plan to work out pain-free, to keep moving, you should go to a good physical therapist, someone that is sports-oriented, maybe, you know, not just a basic occupational therapist, but like
Someone who deals with these overuse injuries caused by pressing and pulling.
Right.
And for sure.
Someone, a physical therapist who hopefully, you could tell that they work out themselves. It helps a lot when the therapists themselves clearly work out, because they can help you better, I think. So
current goals, do you even care about a Maltese? Do you care about Iron Cross? Is that something you would ever work towards? Do you feel like a particular physiology is not really appropriate for those particular movements? Because most people, let's be honest, most people will never get those.
Right.
With a lifetime of training.
Right.
Well, actually, maybe that's false. I don't know.
With a lifetime of training, anyone could get those moves.
Nice. There's hope.
There's hope, but the progress is much slower the taller you are.
Yeah.
So, but I know a guy, he's 6'2", he can Iron Cross,
Woo.
He can planche.
For those of you that don't know, that's balancing your body with your arms extended like so, and probably in an L-sit as well, right?
Sure, and basically the taller you are or heavier you are, usually they go hand in hand. You're taller, you're also heavier, just naturally. Your limbs will be longer, everything will be more difficult. And so progression exercises become very important. So in regards to your original question with Iron Cross,
what are your current goals?
I don't personally want to do those yet.
Really? Wow, that's surprising to me. If you've seen his videos, you know how strong this guy is, and it just seems like that would be the logical next step. But
maybe in a few years. But right now, I feel, because so many other exercises are still humbling.
Yeah. For sure.
Even just working on the planche, on the rings, a tuck planche on the rings. Just a tuck planche is so difficult. I mean,
I knew it was true.
But in regards to goals, I'm really infatuated with getting my press handstand with bent arms or straight arms, either one. So being able to press into a handstand with straight arms, just to bring the hips over and float the legs off. That's and just insane. Lift off. That is I could see the light now in terms of that happening.
Right.
Because I didn't used to have the shoulder strength to be able to support myself. And also, so with press handstands, to be able to do that, the more flexibility you have, the easier it's going to be to get that skill.
Oh, yeah, because most people are super tight in their hip flexors
or hamstrings.
Exactly.
Yeah. So
usually they both go hand in hand.
Yeah, with the pike press handstand, when the legs are together, which is a really difficult one, it's going to be limited by how good your pike is, meaning your forward fold. So your hamstrings and lower back need to be really open, really loose in that scenario, for you to be able to even feel comfort in that position, let alone being able to go upside down and support yourself.
Are you dealing with any injuries right now?
No.
Zero?
Yeah.
Wow.
Knock on
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
But you have dealt with tendonitis in the past?
Yeah.
And how did you address that?
I had tennis elbow for a while, and I wrote an article on that. If you go antranik.org/tennis elbow, or just search Antranik tennis elbow on Google, you'll find the ways all the things I did to help cure it. Basically, eccentric exercises are very useful for tendonitis. So in tennis elbow, for example, where pain exists on the outside of the elbow, it's often because the extensors of the forearm, the extensors are the muscles here, which raise your wrist this way.
Right.
Which you raise your hand up this way. When the tendons of these muscles, if these muscles are weak, or then the tendons of these muscles which insert into the elbow, take the load, and eventually they can't handle the load, and pain will usually surface near the tip of the elbow. And so you have to do, one of the best things to do for that is to do the eccentric or negative exercise. So if these extensors muscles extend the wrist this way, the negative of that would be flexion, right? So if I hold something in my hand and raise my hand up and lower it slowly, I'm only doing the negative of that. So if I hold a water bottle in my hand, raise my hand up and lower it slowly, it's the most boring exercise. It's the most mindless and boring exercise, but
that was super effective.
But that is and the studies have shown that works really well, because it helps. It's not a high intensity. It's not a big load on it, but you're supposed to do it for many reps. So like 3 sets of like 30 to 50 reps.
Wow.
Of this mindless exercise. But if you trust the process, it will help, because it helps jumpstart the healing process for the tendons, and also helps like increase blood flow to the area in a safe manner, and
right, without exacerbating the injury.
You don't want to go to failure or do an exercise that makes it hurt more.
Yeah.
Right. So
I mean, that should go without saying with the. Oops. That should go without saying with most of the stuff. Like you definitely don't want to do anything to make it worse, and hopefully you're getting a training effect, which is actually helping you improve over time. I want to wrap up the training portion with one more sort of nerdy question. The traveling rings. This is where the rings are in a line, correct? And you sort of swing like Tarzan from ring to ring.
Yes.
So how would I program that into my regular 3 days a week strength training program? Would I substitute that for the pulling portion, and would I progress by maybe getting down to the end and then doing it again, and that's those are sets? Like how do you program it basically?
Okay, I don't know where you are in your training.
Weak, terribly weak.
No, I'm sure you're fine. But the traveling rings a lot of it is about technique.
Right.
So if you could do a pull-up or two, even if you can't do a pull-up, you can probably do the traveling rings if you work up to it, if you keep trying to do it. And for some people, the traveling rings will tire them out completely from just one try. But if you're fairly fit, like you're fairly fit.
I'm fairly fit.
You know, at least, I know, like I'm trying to generalize here. Like I would consider traveling rings to be as a skill work, in the sense that it's not pure strength training. It's something that requires repetition, practice to hone in the technique. So the way I structure my training is I'll do my warm-up, a very thorough warm-up. The more advanced you get, the more important the warm-up becomes. And so never neglect the warm-up. And then try the traveling rings, or basically, which is skill work. So basically, after the warm-up is when I do anything that's skill work, meaning it's not terribly difficult, but it requires me to just practice it a bunch. And it helps a lot to be fresh when doing that. So I'll do warm-up, skill work, like maybe the traveling rings, and then do the strength training after. And in general, for skill work, if you do like skill work for like hours and hours, of course you're going to be tired for the strength training. So you should limit yourself to like a time frame, like, let's say 20 minutes or something like that. You'll also feel it when you feel you've had enough. You don't want it to cut into too much of your strength training, but you have to find that balance where you do enough, where you have a little bit of a breakthrough and something clicks, and then move on to your strength training, so that you can have a well-rounded session in a sense.
Last question. I promise about training, but I have so many questions about training.
Okay.
I could just keep asking you. How long are your sessions now? What's the sweet spot for you? I know you've been training a long time. I've been training a long time.
Right.
What is the session that you can most recover from, that makes you happy to train and motivated to train, and that makes you feel like you're progressing as quickly as possible?
Right. Okay. That's a good question, actually, because before, so I have the luxury of going to the beach sometimes and being able to spend hours there. And I found that if I'm going to go and do a legit training session where, like, I'm going to be focusing on, specific goals and doing a bunch of things, it's best that I don't dilly-dally. Like, rather than making that workout be, spread out over hours and hours, with lots of casual rest, or, it's better if I focus on it for a solid hour and a half. Just like hit it hard with adequate rest times. I don't do circuit training, but, an hour and a half should be plenty, or 2 hours should be plenty for someone to have a really good and thorough session. It doesn't need to be longer. If it's really becoming longer than that, then it's not bad, but I found that if I just have a solid training session like that, keep it within 2 hours, and then eat something afterwards, my body recovers much better than if I'm just spreading that over hours of time and not having any discipline with it.
Right. And you're doing that 3 times a week? Are you doing that 4 times a week?
3 times a week is what I aim for. Sometimes it's 2 times a week. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's 4 times a week.
Yeah, right.
Sometimes it's more. Because I'm generally active every day. But I find that doing strength training 3 times a week is pretty much guaranteed progress. But if you're not getting enough sleep, or you're not eating enough, you're eating at a caloric deficit because you're trying to lose weight, and you're not getting enough sleep, then even 3 times a week could be really hard on your body. And after a couple weeks or a few weeks of doing that, you might need to deload, like meaning take a week off, or take a week where you do half the amount of work that you do, or do other things like, go bicycling instead, or go swimming instead. Something, change it up, give the body a break from what it is that you're used to doing. So yeah. And I think the reason why it works a lot better to keep the workout efficient is because, when you spend hours, again, I have the luxury of being able to work out for hours if I want to. Not everyone has this luxury, but if you were to work out for hours and hours, I think it's just very stressful on the body, and then it hampers recovery. So even though you're doing more, you're kind of like shooting yourself in the foot.
See, you and I are well, we kind of agree there, but I feel like we're diametrically opposed in length, because I've always promoted 30-minute workouts for my clients, because
30 minutes is plenty.
Psychologically, it's really easy to deal with. It's easy to carve out 30 minutes.
Right.
But I think once you get advanced to a certain point, it's really hard to recover in between sets to do the amount of capacity that you could really get out of a session, which is why when I started following your protocol for training, my sessions, I would find an hour and a half, an hour and 45, and I'm like, man, I can't. I'm just now getting to one-arm archer push-ups, and I've been at this for like an hour and a half.
Right.
But I think for the average trainee, you could probably get away with a lot less time.
Right. You could, definitely. And most people don't have an hour and a half even, they just, especially if they have kids or something, I mean, they're probably not even working out. So half an hour is better than nothing,
I totally agree. And I lied. That wasn't the last question, because you're here. I might as well ask you.
Sure.
What the hell are you doing for your legs?
Oh, for legs.
Are you sprinting? Are you primarily doing, the pistols? Are you doing goblet squats? What are you doing?
So there's a couple different exercises that so pistol squats are really good. Pistol squat progressions are great. But there's also a couple other exercises, such as the split squat.
Sure.
Like the Bulgarian split squat, or with the back foot elevated. And also what I really like is the single leg deadlift, single leg Romanian deadlift. It looks like it's really simple. It's just like, I don't know if there's room here.
Yeah, there's room. That's good.
But it would be like I raise the leg back behind me, and that's it. You know.
Yep.
That's the motion. And if I held a weight in my hand, it doesn't have to be in. You know, at the beach I do this with a rock. So there's a heavy stone that I find that's like 60 pounds, and that for me, doing that single leg Romanian deadlift gets the hamstrings like nothing else.
Excellent.
So
that's a good one. I like the reverse lunge as well with weight.
Oh, that's good too. That in combination with the split squats, especially if you have like some sort of weight, because you don't need like hundreds of pounds of weight for these unilateral leg exercises. So it's nice that I can scale those. So that in combination, split squats, single leg Romanian deadlift, and pistol squat progressions.
And you're doing those every time you train, or are you just doing them on leg day?
I don't focus too much on the legs, so it's more like once a week, you know, because I feel like, you know, my legs are all right. Again, I don't train for aesthetics, and if I need to strengthen it for a particular reason, like I train them particularly to get better at slacklining.
Wow.
So for
we should talk about that too.
For me, my focus is slacklining. So really, I mean, I already ride a bicycle. So, I mean, if I need to ride up a mountain, I could do that. So I feel like my legs are okay, and yeah, I think people should probably need to focus on their hip flexibility if they're going to do things with their legs, and then strength train.
Oh, no, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so like what kind of stuff should they do?
Only because their hips are so tight. Everyone's, you know, we sit like we're sitting now, like hamstrings are in a contracted position, and you know, the hips are flexed, so hip flexors are in a contracted position. So it's no wonder our hip flexors and our hamstrings are tight. So everyone should stretch them every day, pretty much. Just even a quick limbering up, like your dog would do. You know, if you have a pet, you'll see them do a quick stretch for like 10 seconds. They'll just do a stretch, you know, and then they'll go on with their day. But they'll do that like 50 times.
Right.
So if you get up from your chair and do like a quick like downward dog, you know, like just doing that a bunch of times is cool, you know. But now I'm not saying do that, but it's important to stretch because our modern day society is like, you know, a lot of us, we're pretty sedentary.
Pretty sedentary.
Yeah, sedentary.
All right, I put a bunch of subject matter into the title of this. I think I said gymnastic strength training, which we've only begun to cover, but I did want to get to the other things like injuries. I talked about that a little bit. What about food? How has your diet changed over the years, and do you think you're in a place that's pretty optimal right now?
Oh yeah, that's a good question. So when I didn't used to think about nutrition at all before, but when I got into bodyweight training, you know, I realized, well, I wasn't necessarily overweight, but I could benefit from losing a few pounds. And again, it's not really for aesthetics. It's more like, well, you know, the lighter you are, the easier exercises become, the easier they become on your joints. And so there's a benefit to being lean, you know? And so,
I mean, there are a shit ton of health benefits to being lean too, but
right,
go on.
Right, of course. In terms of like this, I'm thinking in terms of movement.
Yeah, why you did it, exactly.
Right. And so I started counting calories and eating at a deficit, which turned out to be, you know, for some it's a little bit neurotic to have to log what you eat, and it doesn't work for everyone. But if you want to guarantee weight loss or fat loss, I mean, that's pretty much going to guarantee that it's going to work, because it's just a numbers game. You're eating less calories than you're expending. The mass has got to go somewhere, you know. And if you're eating more than you need, you know, you're gonna gain weight. It's simple thing. And so using an app like MyFitnessPal to count your calories makes it really easy to just understand the concept of calories in versus out, like, you know, how much you're eating, and it also helps a lot so that you know exactly what 1,500 calories feels like in a day, or 2,000 calories, you know, whatever. So like women might need to eat like 1,500 to 1,800 calories a day. Men maybe 2,200 or something like that. Mm-hmm. But you know, maybe you start counting calories and you realize you're eating 3,000, you know, but you only need 2,000, you know, something like that. So it's an eye-opener, it's a learning experience. But then over time, you know, I didn't just keep, you know, trying to lose weight. I realized, well, I cut down to a nice weight that I liked. And then I realized, well, I want to get stronger, because you can't get stronger if you're eating at a deficit, or you can really, really slowly.
Yeah.
You're basically shooting yourself in the foot if you're not eating enough and you're trying to get really strong. I mean, you can for a while, but in terms of efficiency, it's good. That's why people go on bulking and cutting cycles. It's just when you're telling the body, you know, grow, 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 it grows much more efficiently than, you know, not having a set plan. But so I've gone through a few bulking and cutting cycles, and that helped a lot, you know, with just getting stronger faster, and then also looking better faster, you know, if that's a goal. But in the past year, I've honed down nutrition in the sense that it's not just calories in and out, but also about sugar intake. So
I was waiting for this. This is the punchline, guys.
Yeah, and I got really tuned into the ketogenic diet, which you're probably aware of.
Sure.
It's very popular nowadays. I have an article on a beginner's guide to the keto diet. It's just antranik.org/keto diet.
Very comprehensive. It's very good.
And basically, it's not a gimmick. It's not like a commercial where, you know, where I'm going to tell you, burn fat fast. You know, like, you got to do these things so your body could become metabolic fire and burn the fat, right. You know, whatever. You know, I just remember all
That's
these...
pretty good, though. Can I get one of those?
Yeah, you know.
You take my money.
I remember all these infomercials. They always talk about burning fat, and like take these supplements and do these things. And well, the ketogenic diet is actually, it puts your body in such a way that it does actually burn fat. It uses fat for fuel, and the reason it does that is basically the basic tenet behind the ketogenic diet is severe carbohydrate restriction, and carbohydrates are synonymous with sugar in this context. So restricting your sugar intake allows the body to use fat for energy, and that's been a game changer, because it's actually, I used to think that we need sugar. You know, we see sports, so you see people on the basketball game, like they drink Gatorade, right? They go on a break, they drink Gatorade.
Yeah, like, recover, man.
Recover, you know, you're having a soccer game yourself, and everyone is having some sports drink, right? Like, and we become it's like a crutch. Like, sugar is like, we depend on it. But turns out you don't actually need it. And the body will adapt just great to that. You know, if you constantly restrict sugar, the body does just fine with using fat for fuel. And if someone is a endurance athlete, or ultra endurance athlete especially, turns out that there's no limit. You know, what happens is they'll hit a wall eventually. They'll bonk because their glycogen supply, their sugar supply runs out. And then so if you see like cyclists, they'll be eating gel, which is just like sugar, throughout their ride, just to keep going and going and going. But if someone is someone has adapted their body, fat adapted, or they've been on the ketogenic diet where they haven't been eating sugar for a long time, and their body is efficiently using fat for fuel, because there is really a huge reserve of fat on our body. Even if you're lean, you have like tens of thousands of calories in fat on you. The body will continually use that as fuel, and you won't hit a wall. So that aspect, in terms of endurance athletes, is really, really profound.
Yeah, I assume you're familiar with the work of Dr. Peter Attia and Dom D'Agostino, and So I've just had that recent revelation. I've been fooling around with the modified ketogenic diet myself, and so how have you seen your training change, for better or for worse? Do you feel like you always have a pretty high level of energy?
Yeah.
What is it like?
A couple notable differences. One of the most surprising changes to the ketogenic diet was my personal motivation and creativity energy went up.
Wow.
Yeah, like,
wow.
it's strange. Like my motivation to do things, when I get up in the morning, I find I have more creative energy when my body is fat adapted. So, and I noticed this a few times, because when I got off the diet and started eating sugar, my body felt a certain way. And then when I went back to restricting the carbs, that same creative energy came back, and I started to notice a pattern that it wasn't just a one-time thing. So, and then the other thing, the shocking difference, is that my recovery is really good between sessions. Like,
really? And you don't need to like eat your post-workout sweet potatoes and oatmeal and stuff like you used to do.
Right. I eat fish instead.
Macadamia nuts?
Macadamia nuts, I love macadamia nuts.
Yeah, man, we've been pounding those things.
Macadamia nuts are delicious.
There hasn't been a ripe avocado in California for about 3 weeks, but will you look at the time real quick? Because
sure.
I think...
Yeah, it's 11:16.
Oh, we got tons of time. Okay, so was it easy to move into the ketogenic diet? Because I think a lot of people are super skeptical. They'll go like, oh, that's like the Atkins, right? But it's, first of all, it's not. The simplest explanation is it's not high protein, high fat. It's moderate protein, high fat, extremely low carbohydrates. And the typical refeeds that people have, we're finding now, aren't really necessary. You can stay in this keto. Do you use keto sticks or anything like that to test yourself?
I did when I first started, but it's not necessary.
Totally agree.
It's not necessary. Honestly, okay, so
it's not that cool. It's such a letdown. You're like, oh man, really? That's it?
It's not really a big deal. What was I going to say about that?
Is it easy to get into this, adapt to this diet?
Oh yeah, so before I went into the ketogenic diet, I had experimented with the paleo diet, which has similarities, where you eat less rice, like you won't eat bread, for example. You won't eat rice, But like the ketogenic diet made it such that, well, you also don't eat potatoes, Right. So it was even more restrictive, and it took a few days, and I used MyFitnessPal to log what I'm eating to understand how many grams of sugar I'm actually eating. And if I look back on my logs, like 3 years ago that I had logged, I was eating like 150 to 250 grams of carbs a day, and now it's like 50 or less.
Yeah.
Okay, and it took me, when I first started to get serious about the diet, it took me several days to hit that 50 gram or less goal. So it takes time. It's not going to happen in one day. Don't feel bad that you had something that was carby, you didn't realize it had carbs in it, because if you start to look at nutrition facts of foods, you'll realize like
sugar and everything.
Sugars and everything. Sure, even if they didn't add sugar, it could be a sugar-based product. There's corn in a lot of our products. high fructose corn syrup, which makes things even worse, because then you're not even just getting glucose or sucrose, you're getting fructose, which is harder on your liver. And that's another thing. So fructose is an easy way to remember fructose. Fruits, fructose, fruit, fructose. Most of the sugar in fruits are fructose. I think at least 50%. And so a lot of people think fruits are good for you. But evolutionarily speaking, like historically as a human being, we didn't have access to fruits year round at any time of the year, having apples and bananas year round. Bananas are a tropical fruit. I mean, we wouldn't even have them here in Los Angeles.
I mentioned this yesterday. Yeah, if it's not in season, you probably don't have any business eating it, and that goes for fruits and vegetables, you know, as far as I'm concerned, with a few exceptions for things that are like, you know, an avocado is really decent for you.
Right.
I can't think of a lot of reasons not to eat it. It has actually more potassium than a banana. So what does a typical day look like for you now? Do you do any sort of intermittent fasting, or is it all pretty much you start your breakfast with some high fat? Well, take me through a day.
Sure. So intermittent fasting is something I practice most of the days of the week. Not every day.
Not every day.
But I used to, when I first discovered intermittent fasting, I was doing it for months and months and months. Nowadays, I'm a little more lax about it. Like at least 4 days out of the week, basically, I won't eat anything until around the afternoon starts. So basically, if you're not familiar with intermittent fasting, there are many ways to do it. But one of the ways is if you skip a meal. So if I skip breakfast, technically, I haven't, because you know you sleep at night, you sleep 10 hours or 8 hours, whatever, and you don't eat in the morning, then you're fasting for like 16 hours, let's say, right? Something 14 to 16 hours. And that has benefits, and that's why I do it, basically. But I'm not like neurotic about it. I don't look at the time and say, you know, oh, I have to eat now because the eating window is here. Intermittent fasting taught me that you don't have to eat every 3 hours.
Right.
You don't have to eat breakfast because it's morning time. You know, the body can.
Saying it better than me, man. This is great.
The body is, the body has hunger signals, and you just need to respect that. So when you eat the meal, if you feel like, oh, I'm getting full, just stop eating.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a big deal because portion control is huge, you know, and you know.
How do you do that? Do you ever stuff yourself? I mean, do you have your days where you're just like, fuck it, I'm gonna eat 2 pizzas, or like what? Do you actually do any refeeds at all? Because I occasionally, like once every week or once every 2 weeks, I will jump out of my, you know, modified keto protocol and just, you know, have a lot of alcohol. Friends, do you drink at all?
I don't drink.
You don't drink. So
yeah.
what is your cheat, if you call it that? I don't like that terminology because I think it's corny. But like, how do you step outside of what you normally do?
Well, you mentioned pizza.
Right, you like pizza.
But I mean, I love pizza, but I haven't had pizza in so long.
All right.
But there are low carb friendly ways to make pizza. I've made them and they're delicious. But you just got me thinking about pizza now.
Yeah, well, you know what's happening at the end of this.
But to answer your question, I don't do refeeds. Like I don't know. Every time I've tried to just, you know, have carbs, to just say, oh well, fuck it, I'll just do it anyway, just to see what, you know, because I deserve it, right? You know, because like
right.
I haven't had sugar for weeks. Well, I deserve it now. I'm gonna have some. Well, every time I've done that, I didn't actually enjoy it as much as I thought I would. So
also true.
So if I do it, oh, and that's another thing. I noticed that if I tell myself that I'm gonna allow myself to eat carbs after not eating carbs after having severely restricted myself, I find it so obvious how the carbs will make you crave more carbs.
Oh yeah.
That. Like it doesn't have a satiating effect. So I don't know. So I'm really careful now. If I tell myself I'm gonna eat carbs once in a while, like once in a blue moon, I can't remember the last time I did now. It was like at least 6 weeks ago.
Wow.
Yeah. It had like 7 weeks now probably. But if I do it, I'm only gonna eat a little bit of carbs.
Like less than 100 grams.
Like 100 grams.
Yeah,
like something
right.
like that.
Right.
Like something just to like, and only the foods that I really want to eat. Like really want to. I'm not just, because I realized the first couple times where I had a refeed, I felt like the floodgates were open. And I'm just like, oh, my friend's eating flaming hot Cheetos. I can eat that now.
Right, I can have that.
I can have that. Oh, I can have this. I can have that. I can have that. Like, and then all of a sudden I'm eating all these things. So I went from like barely having any carbs to like back to what I was eating like a few years ago. And my body felt horrible.
Yeah, I think that's what most people realize. That first of all, it makes you feel terrible, and even though it makes you feel terrible, you want more of it. I think there's already a ton of data that talks about sort of the evils of sugar, and I don't think anything's inherently evil, but I do think that more and more research is going to come out over time showing that sugar is far more powerful than any opiate, than alcohol, than cigarettes. I just think it's the pull is stronger, you know, and people think that it's totally harmless, but it is wreaking havoc on you mentally and physically, and particularly over time. I think that just is totally compounded.
Yeah, I think the sugar, because we have an overabundant access to sugar, and it turns out to be the cheapest macronutrient. So if you think of carbs, protein, and fat, the three main macronutrients, protein is like the most expensive and carbs are the cheapest.
Yep.
So everyone is, like, all the foods are like carb based, and there's just added sugar to sweeten things up, and the whole, you know, a lot of people are scared to eat fat, and so they buy things that are low fat, which have added sugar in them as well. And
it's such a tremendous amount of horrible conditioning that makes people afraid to eat fat. I mean, it's just, the 80s and 90s pretty much destroyed the way to eat healthy.
Right.
And, you know, that was sanctioned by a lot of powerful lobbies. And unfortunately, it's done this tremendous amount of damage that people like you and me are trying to undo. And it will take a very long time to recondition people to believe that normal food, like real food, vital food, is actually the most important. So do you get your produce from a farmer's market, or like where do you?
Oh no, just like regular supermarket. Yeah.
Go to the farmer's market, guys, especially in Santa Monica. He has no excuse. It's ridiculous.
That's true. Yeah. I always tell myself I'm gonna go, but I don't do it enough. I love to go anytime, but yeah.
One last question about the ketogenic diet. Have you noticed your sleep improve?
Sleep is fine. I can't remember how the transition went, but
not poorly, I guess. A lot of people complain, you know, particularly.
You know what? When I started to do the ketogenic diet, I also started at the same time supplementing with magnesium.
Oh, interesting.
And magnesium will tend to help with sleep, so maybe I mitigated those effects if they were gonna happen. Because on a ketogenic diet, you basically need to get more salt or sodium into your diet, more potassium, and more magnesium. And all as it is, something around 70% of the population is deficient in magnesium. Mm-hmm. And so if you're doing the ketogenic diet, it becomes even more imperative to supplement with magnesium, because the kidneys will tend to use up and flush it out faster under those conditions. So when I just started doing that diet, I started supplementing with magnesium, and my sleep felt fine, and it was maybe even improved, but it could have been because of the magnesium supplementation.
Do you get weird dreams on magnesium?
No, I don't.
I've had some weird
dreams.
But
everyone gets weird dreams, though, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Have you ever had a normal dream?
No, I guess that's true.
I mean, I had this dream the other day. It was really weird. Said no one ever.
Right. So land-based proteins at all, or just fish? Are you doing grass-fed beef? Are you doing grass-fed lamb? Are you doing bison or pastured chickens, or are you mostly focusing on the ocean?
Grass-fed is a bit more expensive, so I don't get it. I don't get it regularly, but I've been focusing. I've been eating fish predominantly for the past, I think, like almost 2 months now, which I never focused on before because I don't know. I'm not a big fish person, but like sardines, for example, I eat them almost every day now, and I don't take fish oil supplement anymore because 1 can of sardines has like 1.5 grams of omega-3s already.
Yeah.
And so so it has its benefits, and canned mackerel is really good too.
And those fish are particularly like low in metals? Is that
yeah, they're really, like sardines, for example, or mackerel, they're really low in mercury because they're not as high on the food chain. So like tuna, everyone knows, don't eat a lot of tuna, don't eat more than like a can of tuna a day, a week.
Swordfish, you'll end up like Tony Robbins.
Right, or sharks as well. Any of these, like tuna and sharks, they're like high on the food chain. They gobble up everything that's lower, and so the amount of mercury that accumulates in them is very high, and it's not a sustainable thing to get.
Right.
You know, as opposed to sardines.
Do you think anything is?
It's hard to say, man.
I'm really skeptical. I'm
That's
like,
hard
you know,
to
it says,
say.
oh, we're stewards of the ocean and we're making sure this is going to be there forever. It's like, I'm pretty sure the stocks of everything are keep plummeting.
Right. Yeah.
But I don't know. I'm not trying to be a dick.
As long as human beings keep having kids, which they will keep doing, the population will keep growing and we'll keep using more of the Earth's resources. I don't know if there's any way to stop that.
Now, do you go out of your way to get wild-caught versions instead of
I try,
farm-raised?
yeah, I try. And again, they're more expensive, but it's worth it.
Yeah.
For fish, yeah, especially. I really like. I sometimes get salmon. If you ever get smoked salmon and cream cheese is really good.
It's really good.
Yeah, it's like low carb diet. It's a low carb meal.
All right. Well, I'm going to move into the final portion. This is already a marathon for the Metamorphosis show, but we'll do this. We'll say like another few minutes, and then we'll wrap this up. It seems like yoga. We mentioned this earlier. Goes hand in hand with gymnastics, strength training, with all these ideas of looking at health as a really holistic and broad thing rather than just having 20-inch biceps or a six-pack. How much of your yoga practice is also spiritual? Is it just a movement practice for you? Is it just like a flexibility thing, or is it also meditative? Is that a big part of it?
That's a good question. When I started doing yoga, it was purely a movement thing. But as I got better at it, I realized it's not just stretching, there's also the breath work. And so I think just automatically once you start realizing that you link the breath with the movement or you take a moment to close your eyes, the yoga itself becomes a meditation, right? And so that could even happen with something like cycling. If you get into the zone and all of a sudden like you're not thinking of anything, your body is busy doing something automatically, you can get into that same mindset as well. So in terms of it, I don't know what you mean by spiritual, but it's definitely useful to as a meditation to help you know what you want in life, maybe,
Interesting. So let me clarify further. Do you have a meditation practice outside of just the physical movements that has become important to you as a result of doing the movements? Because you saw a glimpse of what happens when you get into that flow state and there's that oneness of being where you're like, oh, everything else falls away.
Right.
It's just consciousness. Now, have you moved that into a meditation practice that's separate from it, or is it just
one of the things I do now, as in terms of a meditation practice, is instead of jumping out of bed, and just starting the day like rampantly or whatever, you know, like just
emails.
bolt out of the bed and like I got shit to do,
Right.
you know, like a bunch of things in your head going and whatever. Instead, I take at least like 5 minutes nowadays to just do nothing.
So good.
Yeah. To just, you know, and if you could do like 30 minutes, it's even better. But, you know.
But 5. Everyone has 5 minutes.
Everyone has 5 minutes to just like, even just wake up 5 minutes earlier, and so that you don't bolt out of bed. You kind of just maybe think about what you're going to do, but not really. Just let those thoughts go by the wayside, you know. Just so that you start with a little bit more relaxed and focused, you know. Because like I feel like that sets the tone for the whole morning.
Wow.
You know, like how you start that day, and it makes me feel like what's the word? It's almost like it's a luxury in a sense, right? It makes me feel luxurious.
Cool.
You know, because I feel like all of a sudden I'm not rushing from one thing to the next. I'm just doing what I want to do, doing what I need to do. I don't know if that makes sense, but
Yeah.
it's like...
that reminds me of that Jim Rohn quote, you have to run the day, otherwise the day runs you. And I think most people are dominated by what they think they must do in the course of a day. Like you wake up and it's like, now these things have to happen. But it's a huge luxury and a very necessary one to sit back and just be still. And this is something that I've been promoting a long time because I think that, you know, meditation is one of those things that in the coming years will be just as normal as going to the gym. You know, it's going to take a long time. It has taken a long time, but people have come so far. I'm sure you've seen the people getting interested in yoga and meditation and even gymnastic strength training compared to where it was like 5 years ago. I mean, now it seems to be everywhere.
Yeah, it's really common now. But yeah.
So it's added a bunch of value to your life, meditation, and I mean, that's cool. I haven't heard anyone say that. 5 minutes of just doing nothing. Now, are you sitting in your special place with your hips elevated? Or
it depends. Sometimes I'll get out of bed and I'll just elevate I'll lay on my back on the floor. So I'll transition from laying on the bed to laying on the floor.
Perfect.
With my legs elevated. And it keeps me awake still. So, but I could treat it as a meditation. I can't sit in full lotus, so I don't sit in lotus position. If I sit on the floor, I will sit with I'll put something under my butt. I'll sit with my hips elevated, or just like legs crossed, or like butterfly.
What is that for? Does that keep you from your hips falling asleep?
Which one?
The cushion underneath?
It just makes it more comfortable and easier for me to keep my hips rolled, so not slumping.
Right.
So if someone could hold full lotus, they automatically have like perfect hip position, so they can like be upright. So by you putting a bolster under your seat mimics that.
Wow. All right, last question, and then we'll wrap this up. For the person who's interested in yoga, what do you recommend? Like, should I do the 1 month for $50 unlimited yoga classes? Should I find a teacher that everyone on Reddit seems to think is great in my particular town? Like, how do I go about learning this process? And we had Ellie. If you look at the Ellie episode, she has her own ideas. I just want to hear what Antranik has to say about this.
That's a difficult question to answer because everywhere has different yoga studios, and some people are scared to go in the studio, and sometimes the studios suck. Sometimes the studios are great. Sometimes the studio has a mix of teachers where some are great and others are not so great, and you might just get unlucky. And so yoga, there's a lot of, I guess, and there's a lot of variability in like the yoga practice itself. There's so many different kinds, so it's hard to make a blanket suggestion. I would say, I would say try different types of yoga, and you don't necessarily have to go to a studio. There are lots of videos online.
Can you recommend one? Is there a particular site?
a lot of people like yoga with Adriene, and she's cool. She's like, she makes it easy for beginners, and maybe, you know, some people think she talks a bit too much. There's another yoga channel, Yoga with Cassandra. Some people like her. But really, there's a lot of talented people on the internet. If you look online, there's Esther Eckhart as well. She's really good, out of the Netherlands. And she has her own website now where you can do the yoga videos. There's so many different, but the main recommendation would be to try, if you want to do it at home because you don't want to go into a studio. A lot of people like to do it in the comfort of their home. It's faster that way. You don't have to travel. You don't have to worry about what other people think about you.
It's a big deal, man.
Things like that. Then I would say go online. Go on. There's this one. It's called Do Yoga With Me. DoYogaWithMe.com. They also have a YouTube channel. I believe that's what it was called. They have really good teachers. And so the trick with yoga is finding a teacher that you like. Because there's so many different styles, and some people might be too slow for you. Some people, their voice might just sound weird, or you know, or some of the accent might be too heavy and you just don't understand what's going on.
Right.
Some people don't have good cues. Some people have great cues. So you just have to keep trying and finding the teachers that you like. If you don't like yoga, and you know, it's very useful. It helps a lot of people find their freedom. And you know, yoga doesn't have to be anything except stretching. Even that alone is connecting you to your body, you know, because you're just using your body and feeling feelings and being more in tune with, you know, where your body is, what range it's at, you know, how it's improving, how it's not improving.
Wow.
So the main thing is to just practice a little bit, because it's better than nothing. Even if it's a 5-minute yoga sequence, it's beneficial, you know, unless it hurts you and you have an injury.
Right, you always have to throw
there's
in
always
that
like, you know.
Well, this has been absolutely phenomenal, and I want to thank you, and I hope you've learned a bunch. I'm going to go back and listen to this just because I think there's a ton of gems in here, and if you have any questions, which hopefully you do because we talked about a bunch of stuff, please just put them in the comments field, and you and I will get to them,
look at them,
you know, when we can. And I think I see a part 2 coming because we only scratched the surface of what I wanted to talk about. But where can people find out more about you?
I have a website, antranik.org. So it's just my name, ANTRANIK.org. And you'll see I also have a YouTube channel. If you just search Antranik YouTube on Google, you'll find it. And my YouTube channel is also embedded in my website, so that kind of works.
Yeah, and there's so much information there, and you also have a rings program for sale on the page as well, which I am hoping to progress to at some point when I get a little bit stronger. But thanks again for watching the Metamorphosis Show. The sponsor is 30minuteadvantage.com, where you can make a metamorphosis of your own. It's all about cold water therapy, farm-to-table nutrition, meditation, and 30-minute workouts. Check it out. Thanks for watching. And don't forget, you have so much power. Use it wisely.